us now, political analyst Brian Sobel, to talk more about this. Some are saying fabricated, some are flat out saying it was a lie. How big of a deal is this? He wrote about it in his book. And what do you know about the true story and what he wrote in his book?
Well, it's so hard to know whether General William Westmoreland, who had just come off of being the Free World Commander of all forces in Vietnam and back in the United States, may have met this young man, Ben Carson, as a young man, and encouraged him to go to West Point. But anybody who knows the process to get into West Point knows that it isn't as simple as saying, hey, give me a call, you're in. And so somewhere between that part of the story and history, it lies the truth.
How big of a deal is this?
Well, we'll see how it cycles out. Everything's a news cycle, and whether he gets through this in 24, 48 hours or going into a weekend, we'll see whether this has any traction.
Well, I think with the debate coming up next week, if I were a Republican candidate, I would start questioning other things that he's claimed about his personal life.
Well, one of the things to remember is that these so-called outsiders have not really been vetted, if you think about it, the way a lot of these folks have been who have been governors and senators, where a lot of people have been looking at their records for a really long time. I suspect at some point we're going to see Donald Trump under great scrutiny for a lot of the claims that he's made.
Well, Brian, Ben Carson would flat out disagree. This morning on CNN, he was calling it the media pathetic and saying we have too many important things to deal with, and saying that the media did not vet out Hillary Clinton or President Obama the way he is being scrutinized. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with that. Hillary Clinton has been in the public spotlight for a long, long time. People have taken a run at her every which way. Whether people want to believe everything is another story, but she's been vetted from that perspective. Now it's time for some of the new candidates to the national scene to go through this same process. And we'll see how Carson comes out of it. There's also the other story that perhaps the way he described his youth is not, his younger years
about
is not,
this violence.
that he was a violent guy and he came around and may have stabbed somebody, but he won't identify who it was that he stabbed. It's really very interesting to watch.
But it is the loudest, the most firm I've heard his voice.
Yes. Since
he started being in the spotlight was today when he said just that this is a bunch of lies, and you can hear the anger in his voice, and really that says a lot, because this is the first time he's coming forward to show a little bit more personality that people have argued, where is it?
Well, absolutely, but he didn't have a choice. I watched that interview, and he was completely on the defensive, and the person interviewing him kept reminding him a lot of this was his words, his writing, so it's kind of hard to walk back from something you've written and you've said, and that's his problem right now.
But when you heard him this morning basically go after the media once again, isn't that what his base loves? And he's built his campaign on his past. So when he talks about his childhood where he tried to stab someone and even went after his mother with a hammer, he talks about his faith changing him, and God was able to turn him to be this calm man who we now see, and that's what his base loves.
Well, absolutely,
right? But if that's not true, does that change everything?
Well, you know, we used to hear the criticism of Ronald Reagan, spoke in parables and things like that. When they went to check the accuracy of some of his stories, they weren't accurate, and sometimes people said, oh, that's Ronald Reagan, that's what he does. The thing with Ben Carson is if he was kind of telling parables and giving homilies and that sort of thing to suggest that his faith has come around and delivered to America this guy that we know today, he probably just needs to say, hey, I'm a little fuzzy on some of the details, like the meeting with Westmoreland, and just get on with it. That would be the best advice he could accept.
The upcoming debate next week, the roster's kind of moved around.
Yes.
People have gone down to the JV, you know, so what are you expecting out of this next one?
Well, I'm hoping that changing the mix a little bit will produce some different dynamics on the stage. But I think the American public, even though they obviously are not getting behind Chris Christie, are probably going to miss his dynamic on the stage. He just once or twice during a debate comes up with some great one-liner that ends up making the news the next day.
But you still have 8 up there. We'll still have 8.
Yes, absolutely. But as I've been saying, that number is going to slip. And you know what? Some of it's going to slip because of things like we've watched with Ben Carson today. Things just come up, and all of a sudden you find that support slips.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to watch.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Brian.
Absolutely,
Appreciate
my
it.
pleasure.